So last week was the first presidential debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. It was the most watched debate in the history of this nation. One thing that startled me during this debate was the questions being directed towards Donald Trump and the questions that were never even asked of Hillary Clinton. So apparently the liberals feel that Hillary Clinton won the debate. While I do think that Hillary Clinton is like a demon spawn that came from hell, I think she presented herself a little better than Donald Trump did. The problem was she was a massive hypocrite in many of the accusations she made towards Donald Trump. Plus, many of the claims she made were false, not to mention the double standards set by the moderator and Hillary Clinton. The first and probably the most critical thing I want to talk about is the extremely biased moderator Lester Holt and the double standard that he set during the debate. So while the debate, some of the Trump supporters began to cheer him on because of one of his comments about Hillary Clinton's emails.
I will release my tax returns against my lawyer's wishes when she releases her 33,000 emails that have been deleted. As soon as she releases them, I will release my tax returns.
Lester Holt then silences the crowd and reminds them to keep quiet.
But let me just admonish the audience one more time. There was an agreement. We did ask you to be silent, so it would be helpful for us. Secretary Clinton.
Sounds fine and dandy. The only problem is he didn't say anything to the Hillary Clinton supporters who cheered more than once.
Or even spends 11 hours testifying in front of a congressional committee. He can talk to me about stamina.
The world, let me tell you. Hillary has experience.
And you can bet
she's
going to vote this November.
Okay, good. Let me just tell you.
Mr. Trump, we're going to take 10 seconds and then we're going to have the final question.
I prepared to be president, and I think that's a good thing.
Mr. Trump, for 5 years, you perpetuated...
If you're going to apply a set of rules to one candidate, then it should apply to the other candidate as well. The other issue is the question addressed to Donald Trump about disclosing his income taxes. The issue here was transparency.
Mr. Trump, we're talking about the burden that Americans have to pay, yet you have not released your tax returns. And the reason nominees have released their returns for decades is that voters will know if their potential president owes money to, who he owes it to, and any business conflicts. Don't Americans have a right to know if there are any conflicts?
If we're going to talk about transparency, then let's be honest. I think the public is far more concerned about Hillary Clinton's speaking engagements with those corrupt banks and the transcripts that have not been disclosed. The fact that she made millions off speaking for these corrupt entities should be concerning for the American people. Just saying. Another issue was the question about the birther movement. So the moderator, Lester Holt, then grills Trump about his support of the birther movement.
Mr. Trump, for 5 years, you perpetuated a false claim that the nation's first black president was not a natural-born citizen. You questioned his legitimacy in the last couple of...
But maybe some of you have a short memory, so let me remind you. It was Hillary Clinton's campaign that started the birther movement. Although everyone wants to argue this as false, there have been several journalists who are liberal that claim this to be true.
Yeah, actually, what it goes back to is the Clinton campaign. As she was losing in the sort of really bitter spring of 2008, grasping at straws for, reasons he could be ineligible to run for president, some of them said, well, maybe his father's a foreigner, maybe that means he's not a citizen, and they got very excited about that, and then they looked at the law, and that turned out not to be true. And this was sort of a backup strategy. Oh, well, what if he was actually born in Kenya? And it was ludicrous, and they produced, ludicrous forged birth certificates.
He has really started his political activity based on this racist lie that our first black president was not an American citizen. There was absolutely no evidence for it.
So if there was no evidence for this rumor, then why did you start it in the first place?
With her and her campaign passing things around in the Democratic primary? Rich, now listen.
He says he is.
The Republicans are wrong for doing what they're doing. This started with Hillary Clinton, and it was spread by the Clinton team.
We're just telling
back
the
in
truth.
2008.
Another absurd question was about Trump's support of the Iraq War.
Mr. Trump, a lot of these are judgment questions. You had supported the war in Iraq before the invasion. What makes your judgment?
I did not support the war in Iraq.
2002.
Truth be told, he mentioned it very lightly in a conversation when the public had very little knowledge about it to begin with.
Are you for invading Iraq?
Yeah, I guess so.
In later interviews, as more information was released to the public, he changed his stance on it.
Because perhaps he shouldn't be doing it yet.
And perhaps we should be waiting for the United Nations,
But there is a big difference between stating something very lightly without having many facts at hand, and being a U.S. Senator, having intelligence reports given to you, then making a vote that will directly affect the decision for this country to go to war.
Any vote that might lead to war should be hard, but I cast it with conviction.
And let's not forget the part where Hillary Clinton accused Donald Trump of having a long track record as a racist.
So he has a long record of engaging in racist behavior.
Oh, you mean like you did back in the 90s by calling young black men super predators?
They are not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel. And
Or what about when she stated she never supported TPP and never called it the gold standard?
Now you want to approve Trans-Pacific Partnership. You were totally in favor of it. Then you heard what I was saying, how bad it is, and you said, I can't win that debate. But you know that if you did win, you would approve that, and that will be almost as bad as NAFTA. Nothing will ever top NAFTA.
That is just not accurate.
You called it the gold standard.
I hope
you called it the gold standard of trade deals. You said it's the finest deal you've ever seen.
No.
And then you heard what I said about it, and all of a sudden you were against it.
Well, Donald, I know you live in your own reality, but that is not the facts. This TPP sets the gold standard in trade agreements to open, free, transparent, fair trade.
we are making progress toward finalizing a far-reaching new trade agreement called the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The so-called TPP will lower barriers, raise standards, and drive long-term growth across the region.
So at the end of the day, it's obvious there was bias against Donald Trump during this debate. He was debating both Hillary and the moderator Lester Holt at the same time. You may have won the first round, Hillary, but there are still 2 to go.
Secretary Clinton.
Okay.